Praise to the man who communed with Jehovah, Jesus anointed that prophet and seer. Blessed to open the last dispensation, kings shall extol him and nations revere. Hail to the prophet ascended to heaven, traitors and tyrants, now fight him in vain, mingling with God's he can plan for his brethren. Death cannot conquer the hero again. Praise to his memory, he died as a martyr, honored and blessed be his ever great name. Long shall his blood, which was shed by assassins, stain Illinois while the earth lost its fame. Hail to
Great is his glory and endless his priesthood. Ever and ever the keys he will hold. Faithful and true he will enter his kingdom, crowned in the midst of the prophets of old.
Sacrifice rings for the blessings of heaven. Earth must atone for the blood of that man. Wake up the world for the conflict of justice. Millions shall know brother Joseph again. Hail to the prophet ascended to heaven, greater than tyrants. Now fight him in vain, mingling with God's he can plan for his brethren. Death cannot conquer the hero again.
Praise to the man. Yes, praise to the man. And the men. And the women. Praise to them all. To their lives and to their story. And such a story the world has never before heard. Excitement? How's this? A running gun battle at Fishing River. Fire and gun smoke over Missouri. The story of pageantry and scope. A mass migration back and forth across the frontiers of America. Stars falling from the sky. Heavenly fire over the Kirtland Temple. The story of pathos and tragedy. 200 old men, women, and children leaving blood-stained tracks in the snows of Jackson County. Mob massacre of the unarmed settlement at Haun's Mill. 17 bodies dumped in a well. It's a story of epic proportions, of 80,000 trudging the Great Plains to gather to Zion. The story of glory and majesty, of angels coming down from heaven, of ancient powers restored, and most glorious of all, a visit by the God of all the universes and his Son. But most of all, it's a story, like most stories, of people. Some saintly good and some devilishly evil, some who partook of both. Names that ring down through the pages of this history. Some great ones, like Brigham Young, Heber Kimball, Parley and Orson Pratt. Strong ones like John Taylor, David Patton, Alexander Donovan. And weak ones like Thomas Ford, Martin Van Buren.
It is 10 minutes after 5 o'clock. You're tuned to K-Talk, the voice of Utah. I'm RJ. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you don't mind the introduction this morning. Tomorrow, by the way, is the birthday of this Joseph Smith, and these days there are all kinds of people saying all kinds of things still about him. It was interesting to me, about a year ago or so, there was all kinds of hubbub about a birthday celebration here at the new conference center, and yet not a word was spoken about the birthday of Joseph Smith. Now, I take a look at the holidays that we celebrate here in Utah, and it's amazing how we celebrate Easter, we celebrate Christmas, we celebrate Thanksgiving, but it's like in all of this, it seems to me, we had to take some time to talk about this man whether we talk about him as a leader of a religion, whether we talk about him about the doctrine that he established or the new community that he was a founder of or started the gathering of, I guess you can think what you will, but I thought today we would take some time to talk about this man, Joseph Smith. Again, his birthday is tomorrow, the 23rd of December, and in order to help me to do that, I thought I would invite a guest this evening, and that is Ogden Kraut. Ogden, thanks for coming in this evening.
Well, thank you.
I understand from your study that you probably understand Joseph Smith and some of his history as well as anybody.
Well, he's a good person to study, not only because of his religion, but because of the things that he accomplished. I was a good friend of a fellow by the name of Nels Lundwall. He wrote several books, Fate of the Persecutors and The Vision and Temples Most High and some others. And he was telling me that while he was selling some of his books, he rapped on the door and a fellow came to the door, and so he started showing him some of the books he had. And the fellow invited him in, and come to find out that he was a judge. I think he was I don't know whether he was federal or state, but anyway, he was a very learned fellow, and he was not a Mormon, and yet he had compiled a lot of material on Joseph Smith. And so as they were talking, he said that the man was such a fascination to him that he had to compile this stuff. I don't know whether he actually ever published his book or not, but he said of all the great men that have become famous in the world, they never became famous until after they were 40 years old. And he said Joseph Smith accomplished all he did 2 years before he was 40.
He did. In fact, he died in his early 40s over in Carthage jail. And what is, well, some of what I hear these days is individuals who claim that Joseph Smith was a fallen prophet. I guess there are a lot of people who consider Joseph Smith a prophet, not just a man. And people talk about all kinds of things about him these days. There are those who apologize for Joseph Smith. There are those who still promote him as a prophet. There are those who claim that he was a fallen prophet. And there are those that say that he was just a fancy talker, or maybe he was just a gold digger or treasure finder. And there are so many things that can be said of him. I wanted today to have a better understanding of who he was.
Joseph Smith said, I'd rather be a fallen prophet than a false prophet. And that's an important key. In the first place, usually a false prophet is not really a prophet, whereas a true prophet has all of the evidence and signs that follow a prophet.
In your mind, what are some of the evidence and signs?
For instance, I'll take number one. They can prophesy. I mean, who today can prophesy? There's very few that ever have anything given to them concerning the future.
Publicly, there are those who say that they get inspiration.
Yeah, well, everyone does that. But to be able to foresee and prophesy something that, of a major event, that is an indication the man has apparently been given some kind of direct divine inspiration. And secondly, a prophet will usually come forward and speak for the Lord, which means that they will produce a revelation that says, "Thus saith the Lord." Now, thus saith the Lord. Thus saith the Lord is a revelation indicating that it's to all the people. It doesn't mean that if a person has a dream or a vision or even an angel appears to them, that's a personal revelation. And many times people won't even talk about it.
And that's okay.
And that's all right, because it's a personal revelation.
Having personal revelation is okay today?
Oh, yeah. They need it. If ever there was an age of deception, we're in it today. And this second thing about getting a revelation from God that says, "Thus saith the Lord," it's all through the Bible. I mean, the Old Testament has about 470 references to "Thus saith the Lord." That's a revelation to everyone. An official declaration or an announcement or a proclamation or somebody's personal vision does not count as something for all the people.
So you're saying to whom it may concern doesn't cut it when you compare it to thus saith the Lord?
Absolutely not.
And so the revelations that came to Joseph Smith that state thus saith the Lord, that is how they are quantified or qualified as revelations from God to everybody?
Actually, there are more revelations from Joseph Smith in the archives of the church than there are in the Book of Doctrine and Covenants.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
And they say, thus saith the Lord?
Yes, and not only that, but there are revelations that he had concerning individuals who he gave instructions to what they were to do, and they were thus saith the Lord too.
Now, when these instructions came to Joseph Smith and they said, thus saith the Lord, was that instruction just for Mormons, or would that have been for all mankind?
It could be both. For instance, the revelation on the Civil War, that was an announcement that should have been delivered to all of the people in government, because Joseph Smith could have prevented the Civil War, and he could have saved a lot of trouble that we had over the issue of the black people in this country. There was a lot of things that he foresaw and gave warnings about, but of course the people, not only the ministers of the country, but the governors and even some of the presidents of the country rejected his message. Now, rejecting a prophet is a very serious sin, and they've done that in this country.
In this nation, you feel as far as God is concerned that this nation has rejected the prophet?
Absolutely, and it's going to come back on them. In fact, all of the things that have happened to the Mormon people, let's go back a little further. The things that this government has done to the black people, to the Indians, to the Chinese, and to the Mormons is all on record, and they'll have to pay for it.
They?
Yes.
Who's they?
Well, the nation as a whole.
Or those who are behind the government of this country.
Right.
Still today, if this nation as a whole pays the price for what our government did, it's because as a people we have allowed our government to do these actions?
See, you just said a few minutes ago about all these people that are saying things against Joseph Smith. They're saying against him today. They said it back when he was alive. And it's because they have not studied the life of Joseph Smith. They don't understand him. They hear somebody else say something negative about him, and so they pick it up. And so it's just a general view that Joseph Smith was a gold digger, or lecherous man, or whatever.
Would Joseph Smith have just been a prophet for his time only?
Well, that's hard to say. I don't know what the Lord had in mind, but he was given special keys and special powers, and he...
Now, I understand some of what he was given was for all of this dispensation.
Yeah, you know, now, I had a friend who was a Catholic priest back in Toronto, and we talked quite a bit about Joseph Smith, and he finally has admitted Joseph Smith was a true prophet. And the thing is, he read and studied the life of Joseph Smith. He studied his teachings. He studied everything about the man. And he come to that conclusion. He said he has to be a true prophet. And this man even talked to some of the general authorities of the church and said, and they said, what do you think about Mormonism? And he said, there's no church on the earth that draws closer to heaven than what the teachings of Joseph Smith do.
Let's pause for just a moment. Let's go back and suppose that Muhammad, that he may have been divinely inspired, maybe even divinely instructed. Do you think that the people that Muhammad spoke to, that he may have been a prophet to those people in his day? And do you think Joseph Smith was given to this people in this day?
Yes. Now, Joseph Smith said Muhammad was a true prophet.
Really?
The problem was that he couldn't read nor could he write. And so people just took down some of the things that they heard him say and like all religions, they become corrupted over a period of time. Look at what happened to Christianity in 2,000 years. Christianity today is nothing like the gospel that Jesus was trying to teach.
Well, there are those who would tell you that Jesus was just a good preacher or maybe a good rabbi.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
think that Jesus was another prophet?
Oh, absolutely, because he foretold events, he performed miracles. That's another sign of a prophet. They perform miracles, and Jesus did that, and they couldn't deny it. The Nicodemus, the head of the Sanhedrin of the Jews, came to Jesus by night because he didn't want to be seen during the day with him, and said, Rabbi, we know that thou art sent of God, for no man doeth the things that thou doest except God be with him. Now listen to it carefully. Rabbi, we, speaking of the Sanhedrin, we know that thou art sent of God. And yet they wouldn't accept him. He came as the king of Israel. That, well, they liked the kingdom, they didn't like the king.
So Jesus, when he came in his time, do you think he wore a number of hats? That he was a prophet in his day?
Well, they didn't crucify Jesus for teaching the Beatitudes. I mean, he went out and he had meat to the gospel rather than the milk. And he had pearls that he gave to his disciples.
You mentioned earlier that much of what came to Joseph Smith and was presented as thus saith the Lord, that there is more that are hidden in archives than what are now presented in the Doctrine and Covenants. Do you think that there is more that was presented through Jesus than what is canonized now in our New Testament? Even in the Old Testament?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's Luke or John that said if all the things that Jesus did and said were written, they'd fill a library or more. And so we just have a little scanty part of the life of Jesus.
But do you feel one of the hats that Jesus wore was that of a prophet in his day?
Oh, yes, certainly.
And Joseph Smith said of Muhammad that he was a prophet as well.
Yeah, well, and there were a lot of prophets, and a lot of prophets held keys of their dispensation, and Moses held the keys of his dispensation, and imagine all the people that were in that dispensation, if they were going to get to heaven or to some degree of heaven or whatever, they probably would have to pass by his permission.
Now, certainly I think much more time than just 2 hours can be spent on trying to understand Joseph Smith. But it is my understanding that not only was Joseph Smith a prophet of his day, that he may have been given responsibility relative to this, as you called it, dispensation.
Yes. In fact, Brigham Young said that the dispensation of Joseph Smith started at the time the last apostle of Jesus died, and it would go up through the end of the millennium. So his dispensation lasted longer than any other prophet in his dispensation.
So do you think he has any involvement, maybe any concern, maybe some interaction with events as they go on now?
Oh, yes, I'm sure they do, because he prophesied of many of these events. He saw them ahead of time and saw what was going to happen. I mean, just for an example, he said that the saints would be chased out of Illinois. They would go to the Rocky Mountains. They'd become a great and mighty people there. And that, well, then it went on, they'd set up colonies and so forth. So he foresaw a lot of events that were concerning not only the Mormon people, but also this nation.
Let's go ahead and take some calls. I have lines open if you'd like to ask any questions of Ogden Kraut. As far as I'm concerned, maybe one of those who better understands Joseph Smith, what he stood for, and the things he spoke about. Salt Lake County, the phone number 254-5855, Utah County 470-5855, North Davis and Weber County 670-5855. David, you're on the air. Go ahead.
I have three questions. The first one has to do with blacks holding the priesthood. At the time of Joseph Smith, it's my understanding that there were Negroes of African descent who did hold the priesthood. I believe Elijah Abel was one of them. But then when Joseph Smith died and Brigham Young took over, I'm told by a Mormon historian that Brigham Young made a claim that Joseph Smith had said something to him about that the priesthood should no longer go to Negroes with African descent. Is that true from your studies? And if so, where can I find that claim by Brigham Young about Joseph Smith?
Elijah Abel was about 1/8 black, and Joseph, I guess, wrestled with him one time, and Elijah liked him so well he wanted to know who he was, and he talked about the church, and Elijah joined the church. Joseph saw no reason for him not to have the priesthood, and he gave it to him. A little later, the Lord revealed to him that it was not the time yet for the blacks to hold a priesthood, and that he was to revoke that. He revoked the priesthood and told Elijah that when the time came, he'd be the first one of that race to hold the priesthood. Elijah actually was into the 70s quorum, and they never took him out of the 70s quorum. And he even went on a mission. I guess probably about the same way that we send women on missions. They don't perform ordinances, but they teach the gospel and bring members into the church. Brigham Young, in about 1852 or 3, gave a sermon to the legislature to the fact that that was still true, that part of the priesthood was to be given sometime later. We don't know all of the reasons, but I heard one sermon that was given by one of the early leaders that in the pre-existence there was a certain group of people that saw and foresaw some of the events that would happen in this world to those who held the priesthood. Priesthood is not a privilege. It's an awesome burden. And they saw that the responsibilities that go with priesthood are so great that many would come under more condemnation by having the priesthood than without it. And these people, apparently, according to this one person, was saying that they became the black race. They said they'd rather take their chances with the priesthood later than have it now and have that responsibility. A lot of people in the church today have been given priesthood, or at least ordained to offices in the church, and they hold this responsibility, and they totally fail in what the priesthood is all about. And so it becomes almost a curse instead of a blessing. And that's, I think, probably one of the best explanations I know of about the priesthood, because they'll have their chance, and they'll have the right to all of the blessings that go with it.
Okay, every time I ask a Mormon historian, I get a different answer. Can you give me some place where I can go and read what Brigham Young's claim that Joseph Smith said that the blacks were not to hold, or the Negroes of African descent were not to hold the priesthood, because I have yet to find it.
Well, I can give you, I have a book that has those quotes in it, and why don't you send me a letter or call me on the phone, and I'll see that you can get a book.
You've got a phone number for your bookstore, right?
Yes, 943-5651.
943-5651.
Okay, great. Now my second question has to do with Oliver Cowdery leaving the church. One of his biggest complaints when he left was that he claimed that Joseph Smith had a very improper relationship with Fanny Alger. In fact, in a letter dated January 21st of 1838 and recorded by the brother of Oliver Cowdery in the book called The Mormon Kingdom, Volume 1, page 27, Oliver Cowdery wrote, "When Jesus Smith was there, he had some conversation in which every instance I did not fail to affirm that I had said was strictly true. A dirty, nasty, filthy affair of his and Fanny Alger's was talked over, in which I strictly declared that I had never deviated from the truth in the matter, and as I supposed, was admitted by himself," unquote.
Well, I think that's a case where the kettle is calling the frying pan black or something. Oliver Cowdery was the first man in this dispensation to live for marriage, and that actually was the cause that he was blaming Joseph Smith for with Fanny Alger. Oliver turned against Joseph and that caused his excommunication after he made that statement, because it really wasn't true. It wasn't a nasty affair. It was plural marriage. Fanny Alger was the first plural wife of Joseph Smith, according to some. In fact, down in the temple at St. George, there was a fellow who wrote in his diary that he went in the temple one day and he was introduced to another man by the name of Alger, and he said, "This man is the father of the first wife of Joseph Smith." So that was Fanny Alger. It was a plural marriage and not a...
There may have been some people then who did not understand what plural marriage was.
Oh, absolutely. And
Joseph Smith may have been instructed in this matter before Joseph Smith went out to instruct others. In fact, was told to keep quiet about it.
Right. Joseph Smith never gave a public discourse on plural marriage, simply the fact that the Mormon people and the rest of the people could not understand it nor accept it. And so it was kept secret until 1952 when they made the announcement that it would be lived.
So you really believe that the Lord gave Joseph Smith a secret revelation to keep from all the rest of the people and to do this under the table?
Well, what he did reveal cost him his life, and it would have been sooner than it was if he did. I mean, they had a terrible time over baptism for the dead. I mentioned here a minute ago about this Catholic priest in Toronto. He gave a talk at Sunstone on the discourse of Joseph Smith at a funeral, and it slips my mind. Anyway, it's one of the last sermons that Joseph Smith gave, and this fellow, a real scholar, I call him the Hugh Nibley of the Protestant world, and he said that when you read that sermon very carefully, which he did, he said you realize that Joseph Smith was trying to bring more truth to the people, and he was just beginning to open up the heavens to the people, and then they killed him.
Didn't Joseph Smith publicly say that I have given you such a small percentage of what I know, and if I were to give this people more, they would break like glass?
Yes, they'd shatter like glass. And of course, another place he said, if I was to reveal everything the Lord revealed to me, there are people right on this stand that would take my life. And that was probably the case with all the prophets. Most of them were martyrs.
Could it have been that Joseph Smith may have wanted to deliver more information, but that found that the people that he had even around him, I think from a distance we look at those people then, and we could look at the people around Jesus at the same time. And it's easy for us maybe to think we understand who they were, but Joseph Smith, just like Jesus, they were trying to deliver as much information as they could, probably to a community that actually refused to hear the truth.
Oh, absolutely. See, I'm writing a book right now, and there's one
book.
Yeah, I guess so. But anyway, there's one chapter called The Excommunication of Jesus. And I've got a lot of documents and references, a lot of early publications, and even several Bibles that describe how that Jesus had been excommunicated. And some of the people...
Do you think that, well, according to the evidence you're talking about, you're saying that Jesus was excommunicated?
Absolutely.
Do you think if Joseph Smith was here today that we would excommunicate him?
Oh, sure.
Do you think if Jesus was here today that we would kill him?
That's what Joseph Smith said.
And do you think if Joseph Smith was here today that we may kill him?
Could very well possibly be. They didn't
so
then. They
is
didn't.
it any wonder why then Joseph Smith may have been holding back some of the information that he
Oh, yes.
knew?
John Taylor said the more I was around Joseph Smith, I could see that he had a lot of information that could be revealed, and yet the people were just not ready for it. He felt crimped in his life because he was not able to tell the things that he really wanted to. In fact, Joseph Smith, Brigham Young said that Section 76 was the greatest revelation that God has given to man in 2,000 years.
Now, I've got an ancestor who was there, this Philo Dibble. one of Joseph Smith's bodyguards.
Yeah.
I'm his third great grandson, one of them, and I have many of his records about those events, and that's why these kinds of things do interest me, and I appreciate that we publicly get to have this kind of discussion. In fact, one of my concerns is if we take a look at Tom Green, I think that he's in jail not because he has many wives, but because he publicly spoke about it. But Dave, let's go ahead and let you ask your next question.
Where was that shatter like glass statement, do you know?
Yeah, it's in the teaching the prophet Joseph Smith, about 360, I think, somewhere on that page.
Okay, great. My last question is, you talked about Joseph Smith had said that he thought Muhammad was a true prophet. Where can I find that one?
It's in a journal. I'd have to look that up. I don't remember it offhand.
Okay, well, thanks for the answers.
Sure.
Appreciate the call. The time this evening is 5:37. You're tuned to K-Talk, the voice of Utah. Tomorrow, the 23rd of December, it is the birthday of Joseph Smith. And one of the questions I've had is, why? Is there not some kind of celebration or consideration for this man who is huge in the history of people in this area? I'm thinking whether we could make some kind of acknowledgement for his birthday being tomorrow in the face of all of the other holidays that we pay attention to, or for his martyrdom, which I think June 27th, 1844, is that right?
Pardon?
June 27th, is that when Joseph Smith was killed? 1844?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of the questions I have is, why would people today be calling Joseph a fallen prophet? Now, does that mean that he goofed up? Does that mean that in the end, I'm thinking there are people who would say that Joseph Smith, well, let's start there, okay? Here's a guy who proclaimed that he saw the Father and the Son together side by side. Now, some people might say, RJ, what are you talking about religion today for? And I'm thinking that it's a part of our history here. It's a part of our culture here. And yet I wonder if some persuasion might take place that would at some point deny this event. In fact, there are those who would tell you that Joseph Smith gave so many versions of what occurred on what is known as the first vision, that one may conclude that he just saw one being who came to him in the spring of 1820, and the date has not been defined. Therefore, it nullifies this event that Joseph Smith said that he had. Do you think that two beings actually appeared to him?
Yes. In fact, Hugh Nibley's grandfather, I think it was, talked to Joseph Smith one time, and Joseph told him all about the first vision. And he went home. He was a scholar, of course, and a brilliant man, and he wrote down everything in very fine detail. And Joseph gave the whole story. And Brother Nibley gave his grandfather's journal to the church, and I guess one time he wanted to go up there and clarify something because this had come up as an issue, and they didn't want to let him have it. But anyway,
I'm thinking
there's very few.
As I take a look at the event,
There's very few
written in history, in the Pearl of Great Price, that very little is mentioned, I think, in lieu of what actually occurred. But I think a whole lot of things occurred then, and yet so little of the story is told, even in...
Oh, absolutely. And maybe he told somebody that he saw Jesus in a vision, and that's about all that guy could take, to tell him that he saw the Father and the Son. That would have been way too much for him. And so he's very limited in some of the things that he had to say to people.
Well, I think even these days, to announce that an individual saw the Father and the Son side by side at the same time, that's huge.
Yeah, see, Stephen the Apostle, he saw the Father and the Son together, and of course they killed him for it. And that's about the way they treated Joseph Smith, too. They killed him. In fact, all of the apostles were killed. And why? Why did they kill him? Did they go out and teach that, you have to be good to your neighbor and, love one another, and they killed him for that? They knew something. They knew more, and they probably taught more. Plural marriage was not an issue at the time of Jesus because there was no law against it. That didn't come into Christianity until 325 under the Roman Emperor Constantine. It was a Roman law. And when Romanism and Christianity joined together, it was a bad thing for Christianity and a good thing for the Romans. So
I take a look at what is occurring when we take a look at Christianity. And even in the days of Joseph Smith, there are those who they called themselves Christian, and they told the Mormons then that you're not Christian because your view of Christianity isn't just like ours, so you're not Christian. And I think that that is still the assumption, the understanding of Christians nationwide in this country, as well as around the world, that Mormons are not Christian, that they worship a different Jesus. And I'm thinking still it is huge, the announcement of Joseph Smith when he declared that he saw the Father and the Son. I didn't know that Stephen in his day also saw the Father and the Son.
No.
Why would that upset so many Christians?
Well, of course, Christians today, they don't believe in Revelation the way that it was given at the time of Jesus or any of the early prophets. And some of these things are just not believable because they don't see any possible chance of it being a reality in their own life.
Do you think it may be that they just don't want to believe? Do you think that they have just had training for so many centuries, maybe, that man no longer receives revelation? How could God and the Father show up?
If Joseph Smith was a true prophet, certainly Diablo is going to put up some resistance to it. And the devil's going to present every conceivable thing he can against Joseph Smith for his believers to reject Joseph Smith. Same thing in the life of Jesus. I mean, let's go back to the New Testament and look at what they said about him. He was born out of wedlock, and he was a wine bibber, and he was associated with harlots, and you go through the list there.
What you're saying is that there is evidence, if we want to examine Jesus and all of the circumstances surrounding his life, surrounding his birth,
if they don't want to believe in Jesus, there's plenty of...
all they want,
yeah,
even at him.
If people don't want to believe that Jesus was the Christ, there's plenty of things that they can call evidence against it. And the same thing with Joseph Smith. There's evidence that he was a prophet, and there's all kinds of rumors and stories about him that people don't want to believe him. Well, it's there for them to accept.
Well, did Joseph Smith have faults?
Oh, absolutely. He admitted that he had faults.
He had flaws.
Yes.
Okay. Did Jesus himself have flaws?
No, I don't think so. Jesus was without sin, but he wasn't perfect. And man certainly isn't perfect. Go back to in Genesis there, it said, in the beginning God created man in his own image, and there hasn't been many similarities since then.
So you think in the life of Jesus that he experienced that he may have had human flaws or faults?
Well,
he's like any man, but that he was perfect?
He suffered cold and hunger and pain and persecution and all of these things.
There may be something in what we hear that he went below all things, that he might rise above all things, and he may not have been specific. In fact, I think I understand by hearing some of what Joseph talked about, is that he said that he had some foibles of youth, but he didn't get specific, and then went on.
Yeah.
He also mentioned that if I put a cloak of charity over you, would you put a cloak of charity over me?
Well, another time he said, if you expect perfection in me, I'm going to expect it in you.
Well, Jesus, I think it's quoted in John chapter 14, he talks about that you shall do even greater things than I did.
Right.
And I guess maybe he's referring to his 12, Or maybe he's referring to people in the last days.
Well, I think in the last days, that's when the big events are going to take place. We're just about to be able to look over the horizon and see these things that are going to take place in the last day. The devil is going to bring all his powers into play. The Lord is going to bring his powers into play. We're going to see this big battle.
You think it's going to get worse?
Oh, absolutely. And
you think that is even at our threshold?
Oh, yes.
Right in front of us?
Right. Oh, yeah. I knew Bishop Coyle at the Dream Mine, and there was a man.
You knew him?
I worked with him for 2 years.
You have to be as old as dirt to know him.
I'm an old man, yeah. So I'm 39. This is what Mormonism has done to me. But anyway, no, Bishop Coyle was probably the only man I could say that in our time, in my lifetime, that I could say was a real prophet, seer, and revelator.
Really?
I saw too many things happen, not only in my own life, but among other people that I worked with.
But he wasn't an apostle.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't a member of the 12.
The Lord gave him a special mission, and it was just to drill a hole in a mountain. And that's, technically, I believe that all of us, before we came into this world, were given some kind of a mission, some kind of office, some place, or something that we have to do, and our mission is to find out what that job is.
So you feel it may not be any accident that we are here now?
Oh, yes. I think that all of these things are governed.
With the events in front of us, you're saying that there's no mistake, that there is a reason why we have come now, and some of us may actually come to terms with why we are here now, and some of us may never come to that understanding.
Yeah, I think that...
Do you think that it matters that we search that out?
Oh, yes, certainly. We should try and find out what the Lord wants us to do. Not only some big mission, but from day to day. Every little good that you can do to somebody else, that's laying up treasure in heaven. You know, we're in this wild race today for big cars and big homes and big checking accounts. And
now, wait a minute. I would like a big screen TV so I can watch some good football.
Well, you work for it, you can get it.
Okay.
It's all in what we want.
Now, one of my questions is, as I consider the events of our day and the events that are just in front of us, and we'll probably get into some of this next hour as well, is Joseph Smith, is his mission include the events that are coming very soon, the days that are just ahead of us?
When they killed Joseph Smith, Parley Pratt was coming into Nauvoo, and he asked the Lord, what can I tell the saints to comfort them about the death of their prophet? And he got a revelation, and the revelation was to tell the saints that my servant Joseph is with me now. And the day will come when he'll be able to live, not live, but come back and in the flesh, in other words, a resurrected being, and finish the work which he started.
Do you think that means that we reincarnated and come back?
No.
You mean as a resurrected being?
Resurrected being.
That he will come back and participate in the events of what are called the last days?
Oh, yes. I heard a minister of a Protestant church as I was riding down the street one day, and he was talking about how the time will come that both mortal and immortal beings will, walk down the street and talk with each other.
Now,
and that I thought was Mormon doctrine, but apparently he got that from the Bible too.
You brought up Bishop Coyle, and I had a chance, and you brought it here for me, some of the instruction that Bishop Coyle was given relative to the Dream Mine, and some of the comments that were made there that were written of this instruction to Bishop Coyle. And I think Bishop Coyle was told to keep it to himself. And I'm not sure exactly how the information leaked out. But I think that there was a story in there, and I guess there's a reason why I bring it up now. I think I recall that there were 3 deaths of the president of the church, that there would be one death, and another death, and another death, and then the next person who, I guess, is in line, whoever that would be, would go on up to sit in that seat, and then Joseph Smith would appear and say, no, I don't think so. In fact, at that event, according to the story of Bishop Coyle, that Joseph Smith would then excuse every member who were presiding leaders on the stand at the time, and then call new leaders to those positions. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, yes. Of course, most of these things like that can be figurative or they can be literal.
So you feel Joseph Smith is still to be reckoned with today?
Oh, yes. This is his dispensation, and this mess is his. He's got to clean it up, and the responsibility's there, and I'm sure he's going to do it.
He's got to clean up our mess?
Yes. Everything's out of order. In fact, it's so bad out of order, I had a friend come over the other day, and he said, you know, everything is 180 degrees off. He said, you can't even find anything that's 170 degrees off. And that's just about true. You know, everything is out of order.
We're going to get back to the phones. Kathy, I think she's in Salt Lake. Kathy, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Thanks for having Ogden Kraut.
You want to speak up some, Kathy, so we can hear you?
Thank you, RJ, for having Ogden Kraut on. I really appreciate what Ogden Kraut has to present for us. And also, I want to thank you for playing that beautiful song, Praise to the Man. I love that song. And then I just want to tell Ogden Kraut one day maybe I'll get all his books and read them, because I would really love to read his books.
He does have quite a few books.
And then I wanted to say that there's a book called The Prophecies of Joseph Smith by Dwayne
Now,
Crowther.
Kathy, you've got to have a question for my guest.
Okay, I will. But I just want to say this book by Dwayne Crowther, The Prophecies of the Prophet Joseph Smith, of Joseph Smith.
I think it's called Prophecy Key to the Future.
Well, there's another one by Dwayne Crowther on that. But the one, Prophecies of Joseph Smith, is anyway, it talks about all the prophecies and how they have all been fulfilled.
Kathy, and your question is?
And then I want to ask him, has he read a book called The Seer by, it's about Joseph Smith.
Yeah, that book was, that was a series of pamphlets that Orson Pratt was told by Brigham Young to go to Washington, D.C. and announce plural marriage. And so he went back there, and those pamphlets have been put together into a book called The Seer.
Now
and
the
that
guys
means
in Washington, D.C., they were already having affairs.
They still do.
And then there's the Four Hidden Revelations. People can get their hands on that. That's 50 cents.
So, Kathy, what's your question for my guest?
Well, I just was asking him about that Seer book, and also I wanted to say that, has he ever read a book called The Visitation, 1886 Visitation by Lynn L. Bishop?
Yes,
Okay, that's another good book people can get their hands on.
Right.
The Prophet Joseph Smith was resurrected, and he led Brigham Young over here to Utah. He was resurrected before Brigham Young came to Utah. So those are just my little thoughts.
Brigham Young indicated once that he didn't think Joseph Smith was resurrected yet, although he did see him in a vision and talk to him as they were coming across the plains.
Well, there's other witnesses that were right there with him, taking care of him, and, so they know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was hidden, but, there was knowledge of it. Anyway, thank you.
Kathy, I appreciate the call. We've got about 5 minutes before the top of the hour. I've got just a couple commercials I need to get to, then we will be back. I'm RJ. You're tuned to K-Talk, the voice of Utah. My guest this afternoon is Ogden Kraut, and we will be back.
Country in and sweeps in back.
Blessed to open the last dispensation, kings shall extol him and nations revere.
We are back. It is 7 minutes after 6 o'clock. You're tuned to K-Talk, the voice of Utah. I'm RJ. Thanks for tuning in this evening. My guest tonight is Ogden Kraut. He has written so many books on the history of Mormonism. Some people feel he may be the expert on whether it is Joseph Smith or the doctrine of the LDS Church. And yet, he's told his own story, and we could probably take time doing that, but there are other things that we get to do this evening. Ogden, thanks for coming in this evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
think that we could, again, there are so many things we could discuss, so many aspects we could approach. Let's take a look at, for a moment, what do you think was the reason, if there is such a thing, that Joseph Smith's life was taken?
Well, there was a governor in Idaho sometime after the turn of the century that said the reason that the government was down on the Mormons was because of their economic and political system. When Joseph Smith ran for president of the United States, he presented some platforms that were very popular with the people. In fact, Joseph Smith said that he picked up some of the Eastern papers, and he said, when I see how popular I am, I'm afraid I will win. And one of the senators got up and said that if Joseph Smith doesn't win it this time, he will the next time. And that was the political strength that he and the Mormon people had, and in the politics. And then, of course, the economic system was their united order, where they were all united together and lived a common type law. And this, of course, is the teachings in the New Testament. The second chapter of Acts tells you how that Jesus and the apostles at least the apostles in the church, were all together living unity financially. And
so do you feel that this unity, this power that was among the Mormons that became a threat maybe to other communities in this country, and that there are those who may felt that their impact would even be more huge if Joseph Smith became president?
Oh, yes. And you see the same thing in the life of Jesus. The things that he taught were very unpopular with a lot of the leaders of religion and also political leaders.
I have taken a look at Brigham Young, and I understand when he came out here that it was the intention, if you take a look at the state of Deseret or the territory of Deseret, and the objectives that Brigham Young had. In fact, I think there were lectures where they talked about that at some point they would control. In fact, I think on purpose Brigham Young sent out parties to several areas in the West that included California and Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada, Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon, much of the West. And I think that there may have been concerns as far as Brigham Young is concerned that they may have at some point occupied all of this nation.
Well, yes, there's a map, and it didn't take in all those states, but it took in parts of all of them, and it was proposed to be a state, and it would have been a good thing if they'd accepted it, but of course they rejected it and rejected him, and they had the Mormons proposed about a half a dozen times for statehood, and each time they diminished the size until it finally came up to the size that we have now.
But even back in the time of Joseph Smith, that there were those who may have been very much threatened by the popularity of Joseph Smith.
Oh, absolutely.
And it may have had nothing to do with his doctrine, may have had nothing to do with maybe his life or his way.
It was the politics. In fact, I think there were more people involved in getting Joseph Smith killed over politics than there were over his religion. Although it took both parties to kill him.
Probably took traitors from within the Mormon community, as well as enemies from without, to finally take him out.
Brigham Young says that every state in the Union, at least the representatives, were in favor of getting rid of Joseph Smith. All the states except one. And that's how much they were trying to get rid of Joseph Smith in the nation.
You are ready to take more calls and perhaps answer more questions?
Okay.
Okay, we'll talk with Tony and then Elaine. Tony, you're on the air. Go ahead. Hello, Tony? Tony, going once? Going twice? Okay, next. Elaine, you're on the air. Thanks for calling. Hello? Elaine, Going once, going twice, okay. It's 12 minutes after 6. You're tuned to K-Talk, the voice of Utah. I have local lines open. Salt Lake County, 254-5855. Utah County, 470-5855. North Davis and Weber County, 670-5855. Let's see if we can get back to the phone. You're on K-Talk. Your name? Hello. Let's see here if my equipment's working. Hang on just a second. I tell you what, I'm going to take a break for just a moment, then we'll see if we can get you on the air. You're tuned to K-Talk, the voice of Utah. I'll be back in just a moment.
Of your neighbors, ask to take care of your family during the holidays. Come enjoy the holidays at the Country Inn and Suites. Enjoy deluxe continental breakfast. Relax in the 24-hour indoor heated pool and hot tub. Shuttle service is available. Holiday special, receiving a standard room for 1 to 4 guests is only $59. Ask about the $20.02 discount on ski passes in honor of the 2002 Olympics. And a special ski package for 1 room and 2 all-day ski passes for only $109. At the Country Inn and Suites in West Bountiful, 801-292-8100. Located 999 North, 500 West in Bountiful. 801-292-8100 for Country Inn and Suites in Bountiful.
For that special person this Christmas season, give them a gift that shows you care. The new Millennium Dimension 2000 mixer from Kitchen Needs. The Dimension 2000 mixer features an 800-watt power base, soft touch control panel, stainless steel dough hook, wire whips, even a blender. The new Dimension 2000 mixer does it all. Whipping, stirring, and kneading. Best of all, this is the last mixer you'll ever have to buy because it has a lifetime warranty. Also see the new Whisper Mill, the #1 selling wheat grinder with a lifetime warranty also. The Dimension 2000 mixer and Whisper Mill wheat grinder are now on sale only at Kitchen Needs. Visit Kitchen Needs in Ogden, 725 West Riverdale Road, or call 399-3221, or West Jordan at 7579 South Redwood Road, or call 561-9616. Buy the gift that will last a lifetime, only at Kitchen Needs.
Okay, we are back. It is 6:15. You're tuned to K-Talk, the voice of Utah. My guest this evening is Ogden Kraut. In the face of the birthday of Joseph Smith tomorrow, I thought we would talk about Joseph Smith this evening, and your questions are welcome. In Utah County, 470-5855. North Davis and Weber County, 670-5855. In Salt Lake County, 254-5855. We'll see if we can do this again. I think all the buttons are pushed properly. Tony, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi. Can you hear me
That's
this time?
better. Go ahead.
Great. Hey, first I just want to preface my question and then get to your guest. We read that in the New Testament, all the New Testament disciples, when they were murdered for the cause of Christ, none of them, not a single one of them, ever struck back, and they would say things like, "Forgive them, Lord," or "Lead us not to their charge." And they willingly laid down their lives, never fighting back or anything. So how can you classify Joseph Smith as in the same league if when the day that they stormed the jail that he killed 2 men with a revolver?
Yeah, that was self-defense, and any court will
Well, I understand
the
self-defense, but that doesn't fit the Christian, my understanding or the biblical description of a New Testament disciple or martyr. They never fought back. And another thing about Joseph Smith, there have been over 3,000 changes to the Book of Mormon. If he was a true prophet, then why don't all Mormons use the inspired, the Joseph Smith inspired version of the Bible? And why did he translate the Book of Mormon in King James English instead of just the way they spoke then?
People have a choice to either read the Book of Commandments or the Doctrine and Covenants. There's nothing prohibiting them to do that I know of.
So why wouldn't you want to use the inspired version if he's a true prophet, and that translation should be perfect? Why would anything else even be considered to be used by a Mormon?
Well,
other than something that came from what you think is a true prophet.
I have on my computer over 20 different Bible versions. Does that mean that the Bible is to be thrown out?
No, you're hedging. We're talking about someone that you claim is a true prophet of God, who I think was a false prophet, someone who said that there were horses when Nephi came to this land. The National Geographic and other geographical organizations renowned and known for their archaeological, work, have said the horses didn't get here till the Spaniards brought them.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt there, but on the La Brea tar pit, they found skeletons of horses.
They found the little ones, the little bitty ones.
They found little ones and big ones. That's the way they grow.
No, all they found was the little ones. If I've been to the La Brea tar pits, I grew up in California.
They also found them in South America and North America, skeletons.
I never saw one skeleton of a normal-sized horse that was dug up in the La Brea tar, taken out of the La Brea tar.
Well, they were horses, and that's the argument.
What about the
horses?
What about when he said there were elephants?
There's elephants up in Alaska. I've seen skeletons.
So he went to Central America, the Nephites went to Central America, and they saw elephants that were in Alaska and Central America? And another thing, if he's a true prophet, then why haven't his prophecies come to pass?
There's many prophecies have come to pass, and also in the Old Testament, New Testament, there's still many prophecies that have yet to come to pass.
Well, why have they had so many changes to the Book of Mormon recently, made by the church?
It's for better reading and better understanding, and that's the way a lot of the Bible translations are. I don't see anything wrong with that. It's the content and the intent that's there. If you can't get anything out of it, except by reading, you should read it in Hebrew and Greek if you want to get the original.
Read what in Hebrew?
The Bible.
I'm not talking about the Bible. I'm talking about the Book of Mormon.
Well, I'm talking about both of them, too.
Well, another thing is, whenever I hear Mormons in public talking about their faith, their testimony always goes the same way. I believe that Joseph Smith is a prophet of God. I believe that the Book of Mormon is true. They go on and on and on. It's kind of like someone sticking a hole in a dam that's got so many leaks in it, and they never, ever publicly say, and I believe that the Bible is also true. They just don't do it. Why? If they believe that the Bible is also the Word of God.
Oh, do you believe the Bible?
Absolutely.
There are people that I've heard here at these microphones who will tell you, in their opinion, the Bible is flawed, and that it has gone through so many different interpretations. In fact, that there are records that have not been delivered yet of other civilizations that have been here upon this planet that are yet to be coming forward.
I have a book. It's a big book, over 400 pages, and it's called Discrepancies in the Bible. I mean, if you want to look at discrepancies and see that part of it, that's one way to look at it. If you want to see the positive side, then you look at the other.
That's typically what a Mormon does. Every time you tell them, you point out a flaw in the Book of Mormon, they say, well, there's flaws in the Bible,
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, we're not talking about the Bible, we're talking about the Book of Mormon.
Your arguments are not worth trying
You
to
haven't
answer.
answered my question.
Tony,
Why did he translate it in King James
Tony,
English?
I respect your questions. In fact, I think that you'll find that perhaps since the time of Joseph Smith that some changes have been made to the Book of Mormon, and I don't exactly understand why. I also know from looking a little more carefully that there have been times when the Old or New Testament have been altered. There are books that were written during the time of Christ by those that have not been canonized. And apparently there are records within the Vatican in their vaults that have never been delivered. And there are records within the vaults of the LDS Church here that have not been delivered. I think that there's evidence enough that we could conclude that all of the evidence, all of the stories have not been delivered to you or me. And we could probably waste our breath, and I think we're not wasting it right now. But I think we could probably go on for hours and hours talking about discrepancies that we may find.
One more question. Did he or did he not say that there were men on the moon and that there were also men on the sun?
Yes, and that's true. After a person dies, there become spirits, and those spirits can travel to the sun or the moon or any other planet. A lot of people who've had near-death experiences have borne witness to this fact that they
He said there were
travel
9
from
people.
places.
They were 9 feet tall and they were dressed like Quakers.
You know, there are people, I want you to know this, Tony, I'm glad you bring this question up, because if you talk with astronauts, there are astronauts who have delivered some information after they have come back from their visits to the moon, who will tell you that they have found evidence of life on the moon, but our government has not seen fit to deliver this information publicly to you or me.
Gosh, I don't believe you're doing this. What about men on the sun?
I think that's a good question.
That's for those who are resurrected. They can go and dwell on the sun. This earth is sometime going to be a body that will radiate its own light, just like the sun. It will burn by a radiation of atomic power burning. And this becomes a celestial kingdom. This is a type of residence for celestial beings. I mean, this is beyond our finite minds to understand, but that's the scope of which has been revealed.
Okay, I'd like to close with this.
Real quick, Tony, I want you to close.
Real quick.
And I'm just sharing real quick, okay? I've had some UFO experts here, and you may think that UFOs give me a break, or aliens give me a break. I've had some UFO experts here who will tell you that there is evidence, and they call it the dark side of the moon, that there is evidence of, on the dark side of the moon, life there. And some UFO or alien experts will tell you about that very thing. Go ahead, Tony.
Okay. Well, I just say this to anybody who's listening. If they will write the Smithsonian Institute and ask them what their opinion is towards the validity of the Book of Mormon, they will get an official letter back saying that there is no valid archaeological evidence, and they believe that the Book of Mormon is nothing more than a storybook.
Yeah, when I was back there in the Smithsonian, I saw a whole section there dedicated and with little illustrations and pictures and
the Mormon history.
And it's all on how man came from a little bug that crawled up out of the ocean. So if you want to go to Smithsonian for some kind of evidence of something true, I think you ought to look at that part of it too.
Now you're going to invalidate them. The Bible, all the stories, the Smithsonian.
Let's go to Elaine.
I think, Vic, you must be on a cell phone. It's breaking up. I appreciate the issues you brought up regarding the Smithsonian. A number of years ago, there was an exploration to the Grand Canyon to find out if there was civilization there. And in the Grand Canyon, they found evidence of civilizations there within caves that fit thousands and thousands of people. And when the individuals who the Smithsonian sent to find out evidence, when they came back with evidence, the Smithsonian has been denying that evidence ever since. It's amazing how many organizations in this country are in denial of real archaeological evidence in so many areas across this country. Okay, we go back to the phones. We'll talk with Stephen and then Vic. Stephen, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello, RJ.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Okay, I just had a couple things, 2 questions for Ogden. First, I wanted to thank him for all of his work on showing how it is totally impossible for the Negro to hold the priesthood at this point in time. But the questions I had were first relative to the prophecies of Joseph Smith. You said that there were more that haven't been shared than have been shared. Is there any way that we can view those prophecies? Is there any place we can find them? Or are there any books, or is there anything that you have where we can read those prophecies ourselves?
Well, they're pretty well held back now by the church, especially with this incident with the Arrington files. But in my studies, I was amazed at all of the revelations and things that were given in the early pioneer journals. I used to publish a lot of those journals, and they all give stories about how Joseph Smith got a revelation pertaining to a child that was sick, or where they were to camp out, or what they were to do, and inevitably they turn out just the way that he said. But those are real testimonies about Joseph Smith and the prophecies that he made. In these old pioneer journals, these people were converted to the church because of seeing and witnessing the miracles and the prophecies that were being fulfilled. It's one of the marks of Joseph Smith being a true prophet.
Okay, yeah, great. And I'm thankful for that. I've read a lot of those things myself. Also, you mentioned how Brigham Young said every state but one was against the prophet.
Yes.
Do you know which state that was?
Gee, outside of maybe Missouri, no, I don't remember the name of the state. I don't think he even said what it was.
Okay. Well, yeah, it'd be interesting to find it out, 'cause I think that's about the only state that's still able to receive blessings in this nation.
Steve,
Anyway,
I think some of the questions you were asking regarding other records, people can access some of that through your bookstore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's that phone number of yours again, Ogden?
943-5651.
943-5651. Also, on my website, I will have as much of this available as I can. That's rjradio.org. You can go to www.rjradio.org. Okay?
Okay, yeah, just one last thing.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was just, is it your opinion then, since the church attempted to give the Negro the priesthood, that basically all temple work is currently null and void? Negro the priesthood? Basically all temple...
Some say that is the way that it is. There's three things that have been said in the past that would cause priesthood to be lost. One was if they gave the priesthood to the blacks before their time. Sometimes doing something too soon is worse than too late. And another was if they ever gave up the doctrine of plural marriage. And another was if they ever were able to become popular with the world. These three things have been stated that if the church did those things, they would lose their power in the priesthood.
Do you think the coming Olympics, do you think this event is all about gaining the popularity?
I'm going to drop off now. Thanks a lot, guys.
Appreciate the call, Steve. It's 6 o'clock. You're tuned to K-Talk. The voice of Utah. My guest is Ogden Kraut. Do you think that the whole intention of bringing the Olympics to Utah is about gaining the popularity of the world for Mormonism?
Well, I think so, because the church, I took a visitor one time who was interested in Mormonism down to the church, Temple Square, and I wanted to take him into the visitor center to see a couple of the films there. They were very, very well done on the restoration and things of the church, and they were all torn up. We couldn't get in, and so I decided, well, we'd go over to the other one. Went over there, and that was all tore up. And I said, well, why are they torn up? There's people coming in here every day who want to see about Mormonism. Well, they're preparing it for the Olympics. And I thought that was strange because they could have at least left one of those visitor centers open for visitors who come to Utah to see about the church and its history, and to shut both of them down for the Olympics.
I'm going to put this out here, and I'm working on substantiating the evidence, but from a couple of contacts that I have, I understand that the Pope has announced the date, the 21st of September, for the world religions to gather. I understand the objective of this event is to announce a truce between religions, but I think there may be more than that in store. In fact, I think within the Vatican there may be evidence that Jesus came to the Americas and that the Catholic Church may be ready to canonize the Book of Mormon. But also, on the other hand, I understand that there are those among their own community who may want the Nicene Creed announced as new doctrine for the LDS Church. The point is, so that we may gain global acceptance. But one of my questions when I take a look at the possibility of a new world order or a one world government is a system of one world government, one world economy or currency, and one world religion. And I wonder if this event where this one world system may be presented to us sometime next year, and I at least wonder what the real objectives were regarding bringing the Olympics here. Anyway, let's get back to the phones. We'll talk with Vic and then Elaine. Let's see. Vic, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, RJ.
Hi.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
I appreciate you taking my call. And first off, I just wanted to say that I probably wouldn't, talk about what I'm going to talk about because it's so personal, except on your show. I think you probably have the most credible show on AM radio.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that. I'd like to say that, recognize that as we've been taught, what I'm going to talk about is kind of a place that I've come, and it's very disturbing to me, but I want to start out by saying, one, that as we've been taught, that Satan is the master of lies. And I've come to realize he can tell me, I can be told 1,000 truths to deceive me, and only have one mistruth in there that will lead me astray. As I started learning more about the New World Order and the Illuminati, and a lot of the even guests that you've had on, RJ.
I want you to continue, but I'm going to throw this in here as a part of the mix. I did go down to the Hopi Nation, and I met with some of their leaders, and there are some there among the Hopi who feel that beginning this next year, that the very individual who is the Antichrist will present himself this next year.
And I understand the Indians have a lot of insight to what's going on.
Go ahead.
So, as I started learning about the Illuminati and the New World Order and a lot of the deception that's going on within our government and has since even the founding of the country, and then I learned that Joseph Smith was a Freemason and very high up in it. And I come across quite a bit of data, RJ, and it's like I'm a magnet for information, almost like a gift, you might call it. But it's more of a curse. And it's made me, my family came to this valley the week that the pioneers got here. So, my family's been in the church a very long time. I was not active in the church growing up because I traveled with the military a lot. And I want to talk about where I'm at today because I think if I'm facing it, I know a lot of people out there are or will before it's all over with. And that is that, I felt like I got to the church on, my own accord. Actually, I believe I was led back to the church. I wasn't active in the church till just within the last few years. And I had asked a very serious question, just openly to myself and to the universe, here's what happened was I started searching and looking for truths. I read a book called Celestine Prophecy, and it woke me up to the polarization that's going into the world. It kind of woke my spirit up, I believe. Have you read Celestine Prophecy?
I haven't, but I recognize this polarization you're talking about. It is as if two things are occurring at the same time. The increase of good in the world, and it seems as if the Creator is contacting individuals, some over here and some over there, and motivating them, inspiring them, as if there's a movement going on for those who will listen to the Creator and be directed by Him. And at the same time, there are those who, for the dark side, are gathering their forces, preparing almost as if there is an event to come for this conflict between those who are led by God and those who are led by the adversary.
I'd like to say that every listener out there right now should get a hold of the Celestine Prophecy. It's not a religious book. Get a hold of the Celestine Prophecy and read that book and read the series of the books, and they'll understand more what's going on a human level on this planet. But anyway, as I further got along, I felt like I started discovering truth. I felt, wow, this is a truth. How could nobody have ever taught me what's in this Celestine Prophecy book? And so I started searching for more truths like it. And I found that there was truth in almost all of the all the old cultures, the cultures that have been around a very long time. And there was truth in all of them. So I started meditating on that, and I said one day, I said, which one of these truths should I learn first? And I felt like I was shown something. And I'm going to give you an analogy real quick. If I took a pane of glass and I dropped it straight on the floor, it'd break into many shards. Now, what I was told was that each one of these shards is a piece of the original whole, but not one in themselves is the whole. And I felt like I was told, if you want to see the whole, come with me. And I felt like I was led back to the church. And as I started researching and learning more actually about the New World Order and the Illuminati and the thing, the takeover that's happening with our Constitution, I learned that Joseph Smith was a Freemason, and he was a Freemason after the Illuminati had infiltrated the Freemasons. Then I saw something that said that the Illuminati had created a church to divide Christendom. Now, I don't know if this is true, and I'm not trying to argue or debate whether Joseph Smith was a prophet. But I found that what I thought was my testimony that the church was true was based on what people had told me, their testimonies and their stories. and what I had read, okay? But I have nothing that had ever, except that one, what I feel like was an experience, it ever showed me that that it's true. And I feel like that the human mind and us in our desire to want to grasp onto something that's truth or that's real, that we can have in our lives, like true religion, are willing to talk ourselves in and say, oh, well, this must have been a miracle and God sent it to me, so it must be true, and we talk ourselves into things. And I've come to a place now where I don't believe anything in this world. For instance, RJ, if the tape that you've played several times with the commander of the Pacific Fleet that talked about the Trilateral Commission and all the things that he'd seen, if any of that's true dealing with extraterrestrial life, beings coming to this planet and the things that are in store, I have to question everything. And I want to know why Joseph Smith was a Freemason and why he was such a high-level Freemason.
I think those are good questions.
I
think in response to what you've been sharing, it sounds as if you may feel that you've been receiving some answer to prayer, maybe even some personal direction.
No, I don't.
If we take a look at what Joseph Smith talked about, that's at least what he discussed, is the chance that you and I actually have of having a personal connection between ourselves and the Creator.
And I've heard that, and I've read that, and I feel like there's so much deception.
Hang on just a second.
Okay.
Let's let our guest respond.
Okay.
All right, you were asking about Joseph Smith. Was a 33rd degree Mason. And Joseph Smith had tried to get help from the counties and from the states and from the presidents of the United States, and he couldn't get any help at all. They all just turned him down, and they all turned against him. And so he went to the Masons because of the strength of their position and the oaths which they take to protect each other. And when he gave those signs at Carthage jail, they did not respond. And I talked to a Mason one time, very high Mason, and he said that's one blotch on the Masonry that still stands against us.
Now, I learned
Joseph Smith, and after that, after the death of Joseph Smith, they all came out west. And after that, none of them wanted anything to do with the Masons because they didn't keep their oaths and their covenants.
Now, I had learned that the Illuminati had infiltrated the Masons infiltrated the government, and every president after Lincoln was a Freemason, and the New World has been going forward since. And
there are at least 10 objectives of the Illuminati that I know of, and one of those is to infiltrate every organization. Now, I want you to know real quick, Vic, that tonight, with the 20 minutes remaining, the chances are I can't answer all of your questions.
I'm just in a weird place since I don't trust anything. I haven't turned away from the church, but I almost refuse to believe anything now because everything seems to be a lie.
Does that make you happy?
It doesn't. I'm in complete distraught. I'm in complete distraught. My life has fallen apart. I don't believe I have a religion, and I don't believe that I'm going to be able to believe in anything unless God gives me I'm not asking for a miracle. I'm not asking for a sign, but I got to know the truth. I'm not going on blind faith. I only get to live once, and I'm here, and there's too much lies happening. Too much lies happening. And it's a scary place to be in. I battle with it every day.
Now, Vic, I guess I may as well share this with you, that I find that I am very perplexed. In fact, as Glenn Kimball has been here at these microphones, he'll tell you, the more truth you find, the more perplexed you will find yourself. And I think that there are some events that are coming. I believe if you keep questioning, that you may begin to find answers. But I think that there are things we ought to be concerned about. I think that there are lies behind many of the things that we have been told all our lives. But I've found that it does matter. And in my opinion, you may find it today. You may not find it until 2 weeks from now. So let me share this, and then we will go on, okay?
Can I make one last comment after you make your statement?
I will, and I've got a couple other callers waiting, and our time is just racing by. So I'm going to race through real quick, then I'll let you finish with the response. I don't recall which one gave this metaphor, but it goes as if there's a young man, and he wanted to learn knowledge, and he came to this great professor, or this knowledgeable guy, and he said, please teach me. And so then this professor or this leader or whatever he was he takes him and they go to the ocean. And then he takes this young man, he takes him by the head, and he puts him under the water. And he holds him there. And he can't breathe. And he holds him there a while, and he still can't breathe. And before long, he started kicking and thrashing. And then this professor, this guy with knowledge, apparently, he pulled him out of the water. And then he put his head back in. And he held him there. And a while longer, he couldn't breathe anymore. And then he started kicking and thrashing, and he pulled himself up. And then he put his head back down. And then he held him there long enough for him to start thrashing around and kicking, and he pulled himself up. And then he told the young man, when you're ready for knowledge, as much as you were wanting to breathe, then you will be ready. So my assertion is for you, I don't know when your time is, but please keep asking questions, keep looking for the truth. I'll let you make the last comment, and then we'll move on.
I had come to a place where I even wanted to, if there's a God, I don't doubt that there's a God, or I'm going to call him a creator, because we label things, we label God. But I think that we haven't been told the truth about what our creator is, and that through the religions we've been deceived to believing in this mystical God that you can't. I mean, I think if it has anything to do with this planet being populated and DNA and from other worlds, I could see how they call that a God. I mean, but there's just too much, and
Vic,
I think people are fighting with this.
Don't give up. I appreciate the call.
Thank you very much.
We'll take other callers. Next, we'll go to Elaine. Elaine, take a couple minutes, and then we'll go to Travis. My guest this evening is Ogden Kraut. I appreciate you tuning in. Elaine, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Okay, I would like to ask, what you say his name was?
Ogden Kraut.
Mr. Ogden Kraut, a question if I may. So that I want to ask somebody so they can tell me correctly. Do the Mormons believe that God was married and had children?
Oh, yes.
Could you explain it to me?
Well, all of the ordinances that are connected with the priesthood or the church are forever. In fact, everything you do should be geared for the life to come. This life is just a little blink of an eye. And the things that we are here for is to learn the capacity to live forever and enjoy those things. And marriage, of course, is one of the covenants that we make. Most of the ministers have you say, till death do you part. The Mormons say, for time and all eternity. And so they look forward to having a family relationship in the next life just as much as they do here.
Okay.
Isn't there like scripture that talks about that there will not be any giving of marriage in the next life?
Well, yeah, that's when you get over the other side, you don't just have marriages performed over there. It should be done here, and of course, even when the chance isn't available like that, some people die before they have that chance. That's what the millennium is for, and all that work in the millennium is to be.
So, in other words, you believe that the partner that you're with, you are with to eternity.
Yes.
That's a wonderful thing.
Do you think a part of what Joseph Smith sought to do was to instruct us that we are a part of the family of God?
Oh, yes. In fact, we're all spirit children of our Father in heaven. Well, certainly he has a companion, a wife, that gave birth to us in the spirit. And that's our mission in the next life. It's a very beautiful concept, and it's one of the blessings that God has given to us.
Elaine, I appreciate the call.
And Merry Christmas to the gentleman and you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas yourself.
Yeah, bye.
Next, we'll go to Travis. Travis, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say to your second previous caller that we shouldn't rely on the arm of the flesh, no matter who it is. We should rely on our Father in heaven and our Savior to find the answers. That even a prophet can lead us astray. And that I think that's one of the problems that a lot of people are facing in the church today.
Many guests come to K-Talk here, and they talk about their near-death experience and how that event brought them to terms with knowing their Creator, having a one-on-one relationship. And I would hope that every one of us, whether it's an event or whether we have our moment where we come to terms with that one-on-one relationship. But what's your question for my guest today?
First of all, I'd like to know, on the temple, on the west doors into the temple, why are there stars above the doors that are upside down? And
Well, I didn't know a star could be turned upside down.
yes, you take a look at the
On which way
Salt
you're
Lake
looking on the horizon, I guess.
Salt Lake Temple. Why is it upside down?
A star?
Yes, a five-pointed star upside down.
How can the star be upside down? It has 5 points.
Because the top point can be facing down and the bottom 2 points can be facing up.
Well, all I know is if you get out into space, you don't know where top or bottom is.
I'm thinking, it sounds as if, Travis, this may be a question you may know the answer to. Would that be the case?
Well, I kind of know the answer, but I just wanted to put it out if anybody else...
Now, in my opinion, that there are some things that are taught specifically in the temple, and there are some things regarding questions like these that ought not to be discussed outside. I think if you take a look at going around the perimeter of the Salt Lake Temple, you'll find locations where these stars with 5 points, it may represent humanity. Who knows? But there are places where these stars are pointed up, and there are places where these stars are pointed down. In my opinion, on the body of the temple, there are places all around where these stars, it appears as if they are pointed down, in my opinion, representing them coming to earth. If you take a look at the pillars, which I think represent the ordinances, the stars are pointed upward, headed back to heaven. But go ahead, Travis.
well, that was just my main question. And my main point that I wanted to make for everybody is that we should fast and pray to break the bonds of this earth so that we can be in tune with the Spirit. We need to have a broken heart and contrite spirit, and to be so that we can receive revelation from our Creator.
So, Travis, you feel that it's possible that every one of us can receive this personal direction?
I believe so, yes. We're all supposed to be prophets. Isn't that what Moses told us?
That's what he wanted, asked for, yeah.
I mean, why should we rely on one man when we can get it from the source?
Well, the only thing is their prophet is there is to bring the word of the Lord to the people. It's
Yeah.
not that the prophet is to lead the people, and that's the point of trusting in the arm of flesh. When the prophet comes and says, "Thus saith the Lord," that's when we pay attention, because that prophet may have his own whims and likes and dislikes and opinions on things, and so you can't depend on anyone who claims to be a prophet for our total guidance. If they bring the word of the Lord, that's one thing, but when they give their own opinions, that's something else.
Yeah, I believe that Moses saw the Savior, the Creator, and in the burning bush, and the burning bush was just a representation for the eternal burnings that the Savior had.
Yeah, that could be, all right.
Anyway, I just want to say to everybody that we have the opportunity, if we will take it, to be in tune with our Father in heaven, so that we can have that personal experience with our Savior. And I mean a eye-to-eye contact with Him.
Travis, I appreciate the call.
All right, thank you.
The time is 6:53. You're tuned to K-Talk, the voice of Utah. My guest this evening, Ogden Kraut. We've been talking about Joseph Smith. We have a few moments left. Yes, tomorrow is his birthday. I don't know if you'll be doing anything because of that, but in my opinion, it ought to be a part of what our culture is as we celebrate the holidays. year-round, I think we ought to have some consideration for Joseph Smith and understand his life. We've got about 7 minutes left, and I'm thinking I'd like to get to terms with, there are some people who say that Joseph Smith became a fallen prophet. Ogden, do you feel that that may have been the case?
Well, in most of the cases, the people that were trying to kill him were people who had done some pretty heinous crimes. You know, people that have the Spirit of the Lord don't go out taking up the sword to try to kill somebody. It's not the spirit of the gospel. And a lot of these people had things against Joseph Smith because maybe they got rebuked by Joseph Smith for some of the sins that they were committing. George Buchanan, one of the apostles in the church, said that almost all of those people who were instrumental in the death of Joseph Smith had become very immoral. And in such a case, they lose the Spirit of the Lord, and then they start taking up another spirit, which is for murder. And there were over 200 people that had signed a pledge to killing Joseph Smith. Brigham Young said that when he went to, Joseph went to Carthage on that trial, that it was the 50th charge that Joseph Smith had to go to court over. And he said that Joseph Smith put up so much trouble and persecution trouble. He said, I don't know how the man withstood what he did. Well, now, Brigham Young was a pretty solid, tough guy, and when he recognized he couldn't have gone through that, it gives you some idea of the strength and power that Joseph Smith had.
So, out of the 51 times that Joseph Smith had charges brought against him, were any of them ever substantiated?
No, none of them were.
None of them.
It was 50 times. The Carthage jail was the 50th time.
Now, this plural marriage, some people feel that this doctrine was actually evidence of him becoming fallen. And there are those who today deny that plural marriage was ever a doctrine of the LDS or the Mormon Church.
Yeah, well, of course, it's a doctrine of the Bible, and today it's still looked at as something bad. The church itself today is opposed to plural marriage and condemn it. And yet it was one of the doctrines that Joseph Smith was one of the most holy principles that God ever gave to man.
So you say plural marriage was a doctrine of the Bible. Was it Joseph Smith's doctrine?
No, it wasn't his doctrine. It wasn't a doctrine, you might say, of the Bible. God gave rules and regulations to Moses on plural marriage and how it should be lived and how the family should be treated in plural marriage. And he gave laws and directions to tell them to go out when they were forced into battle by some of these other nations, that they could bring back those women and bring them into the house of Israel and have children by them. And by that principle, they become, from the time of Moses, they were just a little vagabond tribe of wanderers up to the time of King David. That principle made him the most powerful nation on the earth. Every nation was afraid of Israel because of the increase of their numbers, and it was that principle that gave him that great strength.
So would you conclude, in your opinion, do you think that Joseph Smith became a fallen prophet, or do you feel that he stayed true to his position even until his death?
Oh, he was a prophet right to the end, and he even knew how he was going to die and why, and everything about it. He knew the destiny of the Mormon people and what would happen. He saw the things that would happen in our church today. And
so you're saying that Joseph Smith was even shown our day today?
Absolutely. You take, and I mentioned before, Brigham Young said that Section 76, the section that shows all about paradise and the 3 degrees of glory of heaven and the Satan and his powers, and that whole revelation is a masterpiece of information on the world to come. And Joseph Smith once said, I haven't revealed 100th part of what I saw. So here was a man who was sheltered without being able to tell everything that he knew, because we were so bound down by our traditions and customs that we couldn't accept the information that even this prophet had given to us.
So do you think ahead of us, and we have about a minute to go, but do the best you can, do you think ahead of us that we have a great, wonderful, celestial reward, or do you think ahead of us we may have some answering to do for the kinds of things that as a nation we have done to the prophet?
Well, Joseph Smith said that the lowest degree of heaven is so grand and so glorious that he couldn't even describe it. And he said if everyone could see the lowest part of heaven, they would want to commit suicide right now to get there. So we don't know how much greater some of the other parts of heaven are, but certainly all those things are worthy of our greatest effort to do the very best we can to obtain the highest blessings that we can.
So are you really concerned about the calamities that are coming, the earthquakes and volcanoes and floods that people talk about, or are you looking forward for some celestial events ahead of us?
You read the 24th chapter of Matthew, and you think that's terrible, all the wars and plagues and famines and the killing that is going to go on in our time. And we think it's so terrible, but yet the Lord looks at it, it's a cleansing period. And the people who are left, the ones who are chosen to stay, they'll go into the millennium and have some of the greatest blessings that the mind can conceive of.
Ogden, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Okay, stay tuned. Next, we've got football with the Oakland Raiders. I'm RJ. My guest this evening, Ogden Kraut. I'll be back tomorrow evening with my guest, Bill Kerner. You're tuned to K-Talk, KTKK, Sandy, Salt Lake, Ogden, Provo.
Things contained in them.